As you can see, I'm wearing a hat. My name's Multiplier, and today, hopefully a short tutorial, but basically a video all about how to EQ and how to compress. So you may have noticed we're not recording my screen. That's because kind of the whole crux of how to EQ and how to compress is all kind of conceptual. There's no kind of formula, there's no kind of technique that I can say like, right, for snares do this, for kicks do that, for basses do that. It doesn't work like that. Kind of how and when you EQ and how and when you compress is all up to your source material, so it is all conceptual. So hopefully I can kind of get my main point across. It's something I get asked a lot, and I thought I'd kind of finally do a video properly explaining it. Right, so the main point about this is there's two different types of situation where you're doing EQ or compression. There is the sound design stage. That's kind of the first stage where you're designing the sounds, you're making them sound a certain way. And then there's a mixing stage, which usually happens after, which is when you take all your elements of your track and you kind of mix and or kind of compress and EQ them together so they fit together a bit nicer and result in a kind of a nicer gelling track. So the first stage, the sound design stage, I'm going to say basically never do any EQ or compression. Sounds pretty crazy, right? But seriously, don't bother with EQ and compression when you're designing your sounds, especially in EDM. If you're recording live stuff or you're kind of doing, I don't know, kind of anything with recorded stuff, yes, you probably need to do some EQ and compression in the sound design stage. But if you're doing basically dance music, all in the computer, which to be honest, most of us are, you simply don't need to do any EQ or compression. You get a lot better results if you just get the sounds right to begin with. So if you're using a sample, don't take a sample and kind of mangle it into something that it's not, especially if it's like a kick drum. Don't start like EQing it and compressing it after it's already been kind of EQ'd and compressed when the person designing it made it. That's just dumb. Choose a different kick. Or if you're say designing, I don't know, you've got a bass sound you made in massive, you shouldn't have to compress that. Just design it right to begin with. Get the attack right, get the decay right, get all the different multi-band side of it. Got like the attack of the low end, the attack of the top end, whatever it is. Like, you shouldn't have to do any compression or EQ at the sound design stage. Just get the sounds right to begin with, and it'll just sound a lot more natural. So, I don't know, let's say you got a synth and it's not sounding bright enough. Just change the preset. It will sound a lot more natural if you just get the preset right to begin with, instead of you kind of sticking an ugly EQ curve on it and kind of making it sound stupid. So, get the sounds right. I might say it 10 times in a row, but it's that important that I just really need to kind of reiterate, because it's the most important part of this whole video. Get the sounds right to begin with, and you shouldn't have to do any corrective EQ or compression. Also makes life a lot easier. So it just makes more sense, right? Choose the samples. You've got almost 100,000 samples out there you can choose from for kicks alone, say. So yeah, you shouldn't have to kind of take a kick that you found off the internet and kind of morph it into something it isn't. Just choose a different one. You'll be fine. Much better. Or make your own one and make it right to begin with. Makes more sense, right? Of course, if you're recording vocals, you need to, or instruments, you do need to do that, but yeah, we'll ignore that side of thing as well, because most of you aren't doing that. Cool. Right, now you know, 100%, get the sounds right to begin with. Now we can deal with the second stage, which is how to EQ and compress in the mixing stage. So, similarly, just like how for the sound design stage, we didn't do any EQ and compression, instead we got our sounds right to begin with. At the mixing stage, we're going to spend most of our time not EQing stuff and compressing stuff, we're going to get the levels right. Because if you get the levels right, you shouldn't have to put massive, say, you shouldn't have to say take some of the bass out your kick or your bass because the whole track sounds too bassy. You just bring the levels down and then it all balances out naturally. Pretty easy, right? Just it's a lot easier than like doing this complicated stuff. If you design the sounds right to begin with, set the levels right, 98% of your work is done. That final 2% or 5%, whatever it is, you might need to do some slight EQ to kind of make the sounds fit a little tighter together. But to be honest, especially if you've been producing, say, less than a year, don't even worry about EQing and compressing in the mixing stage either, to be honest. Like, maybe take the low end out of everything that isn't a kick or a bass, just so, because that's a really basic thing that's kind of, you can't really get wrong. But other than that, yeah, just get the sounds right to begin with, set the levels right, and you shouldn't have to do all this kind of corrective mangling at the end. You're more likely to make it sound horrible, and it's difficult, and you just get yourself in a muddle, and you won't know what's going on, and you won't be able to visualise what's going on. So yeah, that's going to be my main bit of advice, which sounds a bit like a cop-out, but seriously, it's what I'd recommend. Get the sounds right at the sound design stage. At the mixing stage, spend much more time getting the levels right. And then once you get the levels right, maybe do a bit of EQ, a bit of compression to make them sit together. It's kind of an advanced thing. There's no real tutorial for that. It's really an ear thing. And it takes years of experience, and it's the sort of thing you can be doing this 6-7 years and still not be that good at it. So don't worry about that too much. That kind of stuff will come with time. And after you've done that, just whack it through your mastering chain and then kind of do all your heavy compression and heavy limiting all at the mastering stage. It's a lot easier to do it that way around instead of doing bits of EQ early on in the sound design, bits of EQ in the mixing stage, bits of EQ in the mastering and so on. Just get the sounds right, set your levels right, do a little bit of basic EQ maybe just to make the sounds fit together a bit tighter, but you can ignore that. And then mastering, run it through. If you're lazy, just run it through some mastering presets, pretty hot, and then just tweak the settings. That's what I'd recommend for beginners. And then kind of the more experience you have, the more you can fine tune the mastering stage, the more you can fine tune then the mixing stage. But to be honest, my main bit of advice, I've said it 20 times now, but I'm going to say it 20 times because I get asked this a lot and it's the most important part. Get the sounds right to begin with. Don't do any EQ or compression at the sound design stage. Choose your samples right. Get your presets right. If you're using someone else's presets, just tweak their presets. If you need to change the way something sounds, you shouldn't have to do any EQ or compression there. And yeah, that's pretty much it really. Yeah, that's it. But what do you want?